Well, thanks. Thanks for the big introduction, and thanks for the band to warm everybody up. And the plug for the book, Bonhoeffer's Constant Discipleship. Here's I can summarize the book for you. Here's what Bonhoeffer says: just maybe we ought to do what Jesus says. That's it. You don't have to read it now. Okay? And in a radical way. In a radical way. We obey Jesus radically. I was probably a junior in college before I realized that, am I going to be serious about the Lord or not? And if I am, then let's be serious. There's no halfway stuff about it. And so I think it was my junior year. I was at New Mexico State, and I decided I'm all in. It's a radical decision now to follow the Lord. And I've been at it since then. But one of the things early on is to be radical, to follow Jesus. You've got the Word of God. We need to be reading the Bible, studying the Bible, so that we know what He says to us. And I just didn't know how. And I was searching and trying to find somebody to teach me how to study the Bible, because I would read it a little bit and get bored. And then finally, after I graduated, somebody finally taught me how to study the Bible. And so since then, I've been excited about it and have tried to spend a big chunk of my life teaching others how to study the Bible. And mostly what I do is teach college students. And so we've got a short time together, okay? And so I want to share some things about studying the Bible that may help you, especially if you're at where I was when I was in college. I would study a little while and get bored. So we're going to do two things. We're going to look at an overview, okay, kind of the big picture, and then we're going to back up and look at some of the little details for how do you actually get into the text. And then hopefully we'll have time to go through a couple of texts together, okay? All right, so the big picture, this interpretive journey, okay? So, all right, great. So this is an analogy of what the interpretive process is, of reading and interpreting and applying the Bible, okay? Now, the problem is a lot of times we read it quickly, superficially, we immediately try to apply it. Now, if you do that, you will see exactly what you saw last time, or exactly what the pastor told you that last time. You don't see anything new, because you read it quick, you go over here, what does it mean to me? You 5 minutes, it's over. And so I want to walk you through the journey. It's an analogy of what we should be doing, what I'm going to encourage you to do in the interpretive process. So you've all got your handouts, right? So all right, so I can move quick through here. Number one, step one is to grasp the text in their town. What did it mean for them is the first step. The Bible can never mean today what it has never meant. And so it's a starting point. It puts you in context. Keeps you from misreading things, keeps you from going too far away. So step one, you want to ask, what did it mean for them? When we say grasp the text in their town, so that you understood what it meant for the original audience, for that biblical audience. Step two is identifying the river of differences between us and that original audience. There's this big river of differences. This can be culture. Their culture was different. Their economic system was different. Their government was different. The language is different. Customs are different. If you're in the Old Testament, the covenant is different. They got sacrifices and all. So you've got different things. There's a river of difference that separates us from that biblical audience. So step two is to make a conscious recognition of that. Hey, I'm in the book of Numbers, okay, or I'm in Deuteronomy, I'm in Psalms, okay? And so there's this huge river of differences. Now, if you forget the river of differences, then you head out from that town and you plunge right in the water, and you get washed up. You get washed up downstream here somewhere. Let me get a picture. And so this river of differences becomes critical to recognize. All right, and so now, in some text, the river can be pretty small. If you're in some of Paul's epistles, okay, where he's writing to the church, we're in the post-resurrection era. It's the church; they're having similar problems, similar situations. So sometimes in some of the epistles, the river's not very wide, and you can kind of just, hop over and not even know it's there. Okay, and so, but if you're in Exodus, man, you're going to drown, okay, and come up with all kinds of wrong stuff. So we want to identify the river of differences. Now, so then how do we cross the river of differences? We cross the river with what we call the principalizing bridge. We are going to try to develop a universal principle out of that meaning that it was for the original audience. Okay, and here's kind of the way it works. There's this universal principle. Usually it's connected to things that don't change, like God's character, like God's holiness, okay, or the glory of God, or the nature of sin. There's some big things that don't change that are universal. And because of this universal truth, then that text can apply in step one to that original audience. So rather than take that exact same meaning, we want the universal principle behind it. What allows God to say that? Be holy because I'm holy. Or these kinds of things. We're going to take the universal principle and then we're going to carry this principle across that river of differences. Now, the principle, the river, you're recognizing the things that differ from us and them. The principle, you're looking at the things that are similar between us and them. What's the similarity? God's character has not changed. Some aspects of human nature have not changed. So we're going to grab that principle. So when we develop our principle, we want one that's a universal kind of statement. We want something that's not culturally tied to them or to us, either way. And we take this principle now, and we come across the principalizing bridge, and we come to step 4. And step 4 is we're consulting the biblical map. Where does it fit in the rest of the Bible? And this is like a quality control check. This, if you have something really flaky, if you misread it, if you're ready to form a cult, okay, and you're getting all your kids together and you got all these weird things, someone is going to say, step 4, step 4, step 4. Your stuff is wrong. Doesn't fit anywhere else, you know. Where's the rest of the Bible? So, and if you're in the Old Testament, we're going to come across with our principle, and then we want to say, well, what does the New Testament say about this? What does Jesus say about this? And so that's a quality control. See where it fits. How does the rest of the Bible have to say? What does the New Testament say about it? And then, of course, step 5 is application. We want to be able to apply this text to us in our lives. And notice the way we've done the application map, that there's 3 streets. And so what we are arguing here is that there's one major principle coming across with a text, but when we get to the application, there are some parameters, okay? There's some misapplications, but within those parameters, there are several different ways to apply that text. Okay, so we got one major meaning, but when we come over with the meaning, then you and I and you in different places, we're in different situations in life. Where I am in life, where you are in life, we're in different, we have different challenges, different temptations, different things we're struggling with. So we can take the same passage, the same meaning, and I can walk away with a little different application than you. There's still some parameters, still some wrong applications, but there's a wider range. So we tried to pick that up with the different walkways that were there. When we first got this map back from Zondervan, the publishers, I handed it out to my students, and they looked at it and they said, the girls said, there's no girls on there. And so we said, that's right. We sent it back to the publisher. So now they got one, you know, they added one in. So this was college student feedback, okay, on this. All right, so that's an overview. That's the big picture, okay? Now, what we want to back up now and do step 1. What do we do at the beginning? How do we identify what it meant for them in their town? And the first part of this is what we call the observation stage, that and we're going to go over some things. The observation stage is we want to see, okay, it's like you're, Sherlock Holmes or the crime scene investigators. You are looking at all of the details, and at the beginning, you don't know which detail's important and which one's not. Same way in those crime scene mysteries, they just say, oh, there's a glass here with lipstick on it. You have no idea what it means, But later on, you find out that helps you find who the killer was. So we're looking for those kinds of details. So at the beginning, hold off from interpreting. Don't read one verse and say, oh, it means this, Just wait, look, and see. We want to see all we can see and dig. And so what kinds of things are we looking for? We're going to run through some of these to give you a list of things that you can look for. And I'm suggesting, to me, it's very helpful to use a pencil and pen to mark these things, okay? If you mark your Bible all up and it didn't, buy another one, or better still, photocopy. and then mark it all up like crazy while you're studying and doing these things. When I'm teaching class, you have to turn one of these in man every class period. The scripture all marked up with stuff. And so we'll get to one at the end, okay? And you guys will do one on your paper there. But so what are we looking for? Repetition, things that repeat, okay? But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy, and all that you do, for it's written, be holy because I'm holy. And so we have these repetitions, and that's the easiest thing to see. So something's repeated. So what is he talking about in that verse? It's got something to do with holy, okay, right? I mean, you're well on the narrowed it down to what's going on. So, all right. So another thing, then contrast, okay? You want to look, if you see some big contrast here in Proverbs, a gentle answer turns away wrath, and that's a good indication that we got some kind of contrast here. But a harsh word stirs up anger. So what's being contrasted here? We've got the gentle answer is in contrast with the harsh word, right? And then the results of those. What does the gentle answer do? It turns away wrath. What does a harsh word do? It stirs up anger. So that whole structure of that proverb, and Proverbs like to do contrast, is centered around this concept of contrast. And so you see them a lot. Okay, so this one here in Ephesians, you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. So we've got a contrast of darkness and light here. And what you once were and what you are now, there's this huge contrast. So just identify the contrast. All right, these are easy, right? But just keep that in mind. It helps sometimes to open up the passages. Comparisons. Two things are you have contrast, things that are different, comparisons, things that are similar, okay? So like a muddied spring or polluted well are the righteous who give way to the wicked. So they're comparing the righteous, who give way to the wicked to a spring that gets muddied and polluted as well. Sometimes you come across lists, okay? Rather than read right over them, first of all, you're going to write list, L-I-S-T, and then what is it that's listed out? And is there any sequence to it? Are they in order? Is there some order to the list, or is there not? Is it random, or are they grouped together? So here's a big one, for the fruit of the spirits, love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. You guys memorize this verse probably. Gentleness and self-control, okay? So it's a list that you start going through each one. How does the word list? Of course, the surprising thing here is that this verb, it's singular, right? We would say fruits. That's what many of us got a long list, but you should have a plural. It's not plural, singular. So those are the kinds of things you're looking at. You got a long list, but you got a singular verb. A singular noun referring to it. One fruit, how it's categorized, okay? All right, so these lists can be people, places, actions, attributes, attitudes, okay? So we got a whole series of things that they can be. All right, another one, cause and effect. Cause and effect is you've got one thing that's causing it, and then what happens? What's the effect of it? Again, we can say a gentle answer. What does it do? Here's the cause, and here's the effect. Okay, it turns away wrath. But a harsh word, here's the cause, and here's the effect. Stirs up anger. So when I'm in the text, I'll just write C and E, and they may be a verse apart. They may be within a verse. And notice the whole contrast thing we said here is a contrast between two cause and effects. And so you've got cause and effect, and contrast. How about this one? For the wages of sin, here's the cause. What's the effect? Is death. And then we get another comparison again, but the gift of God, here's another cause, here's another effect, eternal life in Jesus Christ. All right, so cause and effects, another one to spot and to write those down. Number 6, figures of speech. Now, figures of speech are in the Bible all the time. Catch the figure of speech, okay? And especially in the Old Testament, especially in Psalms, especially in the prophets. Paul uses it, but not quite so much. But if you're in Psalms, there's a figure of speech in every verse. The figures of speech are often very colorful. Here we hear of Psalm 119, your word is a lamp for my feet, a light for my path, of course, and that's before they had street lights and flashlights. So if you're walking around at night, you need a lamp so that you can see. So you have this wonderful figure of speech, and when I see one in the text, I'll just abbreviate it. I'll write FOS, figure of speech. And then you want to stop and ask, what is the figure communicating? What's the figure of speech doing? Figures of speech connect emotionally, okay? It's not that there's no intellectual component to it, but they pull you into the picture. They give you a visual picture, and usually that affects your emotions. That's why you see figures of speech more in poetry than you do in regular didactic language like Paul. The figures of speech. Look at this one from Isaiah. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. How many of you have dreams that you fly? Okay, fess up. All right. We could go around the room. It's different ones of you. And mine, I just kind of start floating away, And I think, oh, cool, it's a flying dream. I mean, because it's fun, And then if I wake up, I'm mad. I just kind of float around. And out in New Mexico, where I grew up, they had these big birds of prey. I think they were hawks. But we were in the desert, right next to the mountains. And the birds could glide over to the mountain, front of the mountain, catch the hot drafts, pulling them up. And it would lift them a couple of thousand feet. And then they could go out looking for their prey. And so they would just circle around. So they could go all afternoon, never flap their wings, They just coast around and go back up. And I always thought, that's the coolest thing. That's the coolest thing. All right, so same thing in ancient Israel, man. They got these birds that just coasting around on it, hot air, okay? And that's the image, That's what they want. Waiting in the Lord's what? It's like that, man. Be like that bird that just coasts, doesn't even flap his wings. And so we want to catch the figures of speech. What is he saying? What's the image? What's the impact? What's the emotional impact they're trying to get when they give that figure of speech to us? Conjunctions, all right. So certainly conjunctions connect everything together. So don't read right over them. Go ahead and mark them and ask them. What's the conjunction doing? Wages of sin is death, but the free gift is eternal life. Therefore, these therefores like this. Usually there's something, you may have a whole chapter, you may have 2 chapters in front of you. They just made some theological point, and then he says, therefore, because of that, and this is a big cause and effect, then do this. Often when Paul writes, he will give us a couple of chapters of doctrine. Here's what Jesus has done for you, he says in the first half of Ephesians, and then he's going to say, therefore, walk worthy of your calling. And so you've got this therefore that ties those together. All right, so conjunctions is another thing to be looking for. Verb tenses. Now go with verbs as much as your English training allows you. All right, if you're an English major, man, go for it. All right, if you can say this is a past, present, progressive, if you know what that means, good. Okay, go with that. But certainly all of you can get the difference between active and passive. All right, Bill hit the ball was hit by Bill. Those active and passive, and those are important. The difference between what we do and what God has done for us. And so look at actives and passives, presents and futures, these kinds of things, okay? Look at this one from Colossians. Since then you have been raised. This is passive, okay? It's what God has done. Since you have been raised by Christ, you didn't raise yourself, okay? But you have been raised, then imperative, right? Set your hearts on things above where Christ is, present tense, okay? Seated at the right hand of God. So notice the actives and the passive verbs when you're marking them. And if you're studying the passage thoroughly, I would look at all the verbs and see if you can qualify and classify all of the verbs that you're going through, okay? All right. Identify all the pronouns. Who are they talking about in the pronouns? Praise be to God and the Father of... And notice the repetition, our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us in the heavenly realms. But make sure you always can identify those. Okay, all right, now, this list, and this is the first half of the list. It's not an all-inclusive list, and these are not the only things that you'll find in the text. It's to get you started, okay? At least find these things. These are the kinds of, what you're looking for is details. The details of the text, and you're going to mark as many as you can, all kinds of details in the text. And then before you start asking, what does it mean? Because the more the details that you've marked down in the text, you have more data there. You're getting closer to what the author is intending to say. And suddenly you can say, oh, this goes with that, and this, oh, I never noticed that before. And suddenly it'll start opening things. And after you have done some of the marking, then you start asking, okay, what is this? What does this mean? What did it mean for them? How much of this is culturally different or the same? What's my principle? And then how am I going to apply that? Okay. All right. So let's Let's do this. Look at the next passage, okay? All right? So get your pencils out, all right? You're not getting off easy, okay? You can't just sit, okay? All right, so take that first passage there in Romans 12, 1-2, and start marking it up. All right? Remember what we're doing. We're looking at repetitions, cause and effect, verbs, prepositions, conjunctions. And anything else, okay? Any other kind of detail, like why is it this and why is it that? You can put question marks at it. Why do they do this or why do they do that? All right, so let's talk about it. I know you don't have time. You didn't finish. You're still going. You said, I'm just getting going. Okay, well, you can finish that up later on. Now, in class, when I teach this man, the first verse they get is Acts 1:8. They have to find 25 observations. They turn it in. I give it back to them, so you got to find another 25. The whole class groans. So they go home, find another one verse, okay, another 25 observations. They come back very suspiciously the second day, okay? And so all that to say, there's a lot of stuff, okay? You can keep digging in when you got a whole paragraph like that, okay? I know I gave you guys a couple of minutes, all right? But tell me some things. What did you find? What about word repetitions? What repeats? Shout it out or raise your hand. What? Pleasing, yeah, okay, yeah, pleasing, good. All right, we got pleasing down here, right? Where's the other one? Pleasing to God. So it's pleasing to God, his good, pleasing, perfect will. All right, great. What else? Will? Did you say will? Okay, all right, yeah, will. Good. We've got his will here, all right? Perfect will. What God's will. This will doesn't count, right? Different will. It's a verb, right? Two wills. So don't worry about, you're going to do repetition, but we're really looking for the same words. All right, so good. Will, what else is repeated? All right, God, good, great, thanks. I was waiting for you to say God, all right. All right, yeah, so we got God. God is here. Oh, hold on. So we got God, and then, I'm going to erase these other just for a minute. And then we got God, and then we got God here. And notice, God's what in the first one? And they're using God a little differently, right? The first one, they're talking about God's mercy. Hold on. I want the pen. Okay. All right. So this one's God's mercy, all right? And then we got what's holy and pleasing to God. There's nothing connected with it. At the last one, approve what God's will is at the end. So it opens, this whole paragraph opens with God's mercy and it closes with God's will. And it moves from mercy to will. Okay, all right, that's the movement. All right, now what else? What are some other things? What did you see? Now there's no dumb things here. We're just seeing, we're not looking for deep things. Okay, don't say, oh, this is nothing. Okay, right now we're just trying to see observation, cause and effects, things, conjunctions, whatever it is. And later on, you sort it out and say what's important and what's not important, all right? So.
Contrast between light and darkness.
Okay, yeah, so the contrast here between, well, you're down here though. We don't do that yet? Okay, right? We're in this one, we're in Romans 12. That is the big contrast in the next one, okay? All right, he's jumping ahead, that's tomorrow's homework. Okay, all right. Correct, right? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, all right, so verbs, we got active verbs, right? I urge you, okay, in view of God's mercy, to offer. So he's urging them to offer. These are present tense verbs, okay? But what about do not conform?
I think that contrasts with being transformed.
Okay, yeah. There's the contrast that we had. Don't be conformed to the pattern, but be transformed. All right, but these are imperatives. Okay, imperative. Don't be conformed, but be transformed. In contrast between the two, and then you will be able. Future tense. All right, and so what about in view of God's mercy and this therefore at the beginning? This points backwards. Okay, what has he been talking about? Okay, he's been talking about all of this stuff that God has done. The first 11 chapters of Romans, okay, he's been teaching us about justification by faith, All of this stuff about God and his grace and his mercy. Now chapter 12, therefore, in light of chapters 1 to 11, in view of God's mercy, all that God has done, then offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. What is this? Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Are you really doing that? You're going to put your body up on the altar and light the fuse and burn it up? No. So what do we call it? Figure of speech. Good. Great. I hope so. Okay. I hope so. No, it's a very figurative language, okay, drawn out of the whole Jewish sacrificial system. Just like you used to take lambs and offer them up here completely, now you are to offer your whole body to be there. So there's an analogy there. But it's a figure of speech. There's some similarities and there's some differences, but you need to catch the image of that. That's a pretty strong statement, okay, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, one that's sacrificed completely to God, but it's an ongoing principle that takes place, okay? All right, so this is the kind of stuff, okay? But you keep going, see as much as you can. And if you're doing it for an assignment, you end up doing circles and lines and writing cause and writing effect. You can write things out in the margins. There's a list. Usually I'll put questions. Why does he say that? Why does he say this? And so you want to get through the text with as much as you see. And as you work through it, you'll start getting a little more familiar with the text. You'll start seeing things that you hadn't thought about before, and then you'll start pulling all this stuff together, and then you start to ask, okay, what does this actually mean?